Taking a look at all the very latest from around the world, and here at home now, it's the ITV Lunchtime News.
New sanctions are to get tougher on Russia after alleged war crimes in Ukraine. There's a warning they won't be the last, though. Here, the Prime Minister condemns in the strongest terms what's happening in the country.
When you look at what's happening in Bucha, the revelations that we're seeing from what Putin has done in Ukraine, which doesn't look far short of genocide, to me, it is no wonder that people are responding in the way that they are.
Also this lunchtime, less money in your pocket with a rise in national insurance contributions. The government insists it is right and fair to fund better social care.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Lucy Watson.
Good afternoon. Tougher new sanctions are to be imposed by the West on Russia, and it's being reported the restrictions could target Vladimir Putin's daughters. The president of the European Commission says this latest round won't be the last, and that Europe will now look at curbing Russia's oil and gas revenues. NATO foreign ministers are meeting in Brussels today to decide how to respond to Russia's alleged war crimes in Ukraine. Peter Smith is inside the country for us with the latest now from Lviv. His piece does contain images from the conflict from the start.
In the towns and villages surrounding Kyiv, Russia's retreat has removed the veil that covered what happened here. Every day, the horrors that were hidden are being revealed. Some of the images are too graphic and too distressing to show, but here the world is now bearing witness to atrocities and a trail of unimaginable suffering.
It's horrible. You see, it's just 6 bodies here, and that house, you can see maybe 3, and that house, it's maybe 1 body. It's shot. They was shot and burned after it.
Ukraine is asking the world to respond to these civilian massacres with severe sanctions.
After the things the world saw in Bucha, sanctions against Russia must be commensurate with the gravity of war crimes committed by the occupiers.
The EU has already proposed energy sanctions on Russia for the first time, and today the European Council promised to toughen up, describing evidence coming out of Ukraine in the strongest terms so far.
Yet more proof of war crimes, summary executions, bodies littered in the streets, mass graves. This is not a special operation. These are war crimes.
The Prime Minister has gone even further, for the first time using the word genocide, and says the UK stands ready to back up EU sanctions.
I'm afraid when you look at what's happening in Bucha, the revelations that we're seeing from what Putin has done in Ukraine, which doesn't look far short of genocide, to me, it is no wonder that people are responding in the way that they are.
There is also military support coming. These were spotted on a train in the Czech Republic, and it would be the first time Ukraine has been given tanks. The Czech government has refused to comment on the pictures, but confirmed they are sending military material. And this is why it's needed. After retreat from Kyiv, Russian weapons are still in Ukraine, merely refocusing their direction of fire. A new assault in the east is expected in days, and Russia has released these images of cruise missiles launched. And these are the consequences of Russian firepower. CCTV from a children's hospital in Mykolaiv. The ambulance hit was donated from the UK. And these images of firefighters battling against a blaze at an oil depot in Dnipro, striking at a vital source of fuel not just for the army, but for the Ukrainian people who are still left to suffer.
And Peter joins us now. Peter, NATO leaders are meeting this lunchtime. What are we expecting from this?
Well, as we speak, these NATO representatives are around the table in Brussels, and they're looking at fresh rounds of sanctions specifically to target and punish the Kremlin for the images that have been coming out of areas like Bucha, uncovered by our ITV News teams in the region, allegations of war crimes. And as well as offering military support, the NATO Secretary-General has said that they will offer their unequivocal support to the UN investigation to determine whether there have been war crimes committed in what they have called an unprovoked and brutal invasion of Ukraine.
Peter in Lviv, thank you. Millions of workers will start paying higher national insurance from today as the government tries to raise billions of pounds to pay for better health and social care. The increase of 1.25% comes into force despite pressure to delay it because of the rising cost of living. The more you earn, the more you'll pay. That means if your salary is £20,000, you'll pay an extra £89 a year, whereas people earning £50,000 a year will pay an extra £505 annually. However, in July, the threshold for starting to pay national insurance will change. So people earning less than £35,000 a year may see a drop in the amount of NI they pay. Now, with more details on this, here's Good Morning Britain's Juliet Dunlop.
From food to fuel to bricks, almost everything is going up, and now there's a rise in national insurance to navigate.
I've done the calculation on my wage, and again, it equates to roughly approximately about 35 quid a month extra that I'm actually losing out. And like I say, with the increase of cost of petrol, fuel, gas, electric, it creeps up and creeps up. So all of a sudden, you're a considerable amount of money down.
At this builder's merchant, the boss is giving all the staff a cost of living bonus, but employers are also taking a hit.
As a company for us, that's going to be an additional £35,000 that we've got to find from somewhere. So that on top of all the other costs of fuel, which is probably going to be in excess of £100,000, you know, we're getting sort of hammered from every direction, really.
While the changes are aimed at helping those on lower incomes, for many, they don't go far enough.
If you're getting your money from a pension or from renting out properties or something like that, if you've got unearned income, then you don't pay. So personally, I would have preferred to have used income tax as a way of doing this. That spreads the burden much more fairly.
The extra money will go to the NHS and the social care system in England. Additional cash will also go to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
The Prime Minister has explained why he's not prepared to extend the ban on conversion therapy to transgender people. He was speaking during a hospital visit in Hertfordshire. Our political correspondent Libby Wiener is in Westminster for us. Libby, what has he been saying?
Yes, well, no one can now accuse the Prime Minister of ducking this issue, despite the fact there has been a huge backlash, not least from some of his own Conservative MPs. He says clearly that while he supports the idea that gay conversion is an abhorrent practice and should be banned, he doesn't believe the ban should extend to people who want to change gender. And that's because changing gender involves irreversible treatments, hormone treatment, breast removal and the like. And he doesn't believe that people should be allowed to go ahead and undergo such treatments without consulting at least their parents.
I'm 100% committed to this, and we will have a ban on gay conversion therapy, which to me is utterly abhorrent. But there are complexities and sensitivities when you move from the area of sexuality to the question of gender, and I'm afraid there are things that I think still need to be worked out.
The Prime Minister also said that he doesn't believe that men who transition to become women should be allowed to compete in women's sport. And he also says there should be safe spaces for women in hospitals and prisons. Now, all this has led to very fierce and angry debate, not least on social media. But the Prime Minister seems to have been convinced by the argument that it is vulnerable young people that need protecting.
Libby, thank you. COVID case rates are at their highest ever level in England, with experts warning of an increase in hospitalisations and deaths. While coronavirus cases may have peaked in younger age groups, they are
Since May 2020, Imperial College London has been testing elements of the population in England for its REACT study, and this has been a really good marker to see the prevalence of coronavirus within the population. Well, they've released their latest report. It's the last as well. So let's just have a quick closer look at some of its findings. Based on almost 110,000 tests that were taken between the 8th and 31st of March, just over 6% were positive. As we can see, that's 1 in 16 people, which, as we said just now, is the highest ever recorded. Infections rose in all age groups, remain highest in the 5 to 11-year-olds, with almost 1 in 10 testing positive. And the study found that while that infection rates seem to be slowing down in the under 55s, in the over 75s, infections have tripled. Now, that's around 1 in 20 having the virus there. So there is particular concern for older people as more likely to get seriously ill with COVID. And scientists have warned that with rising levels, we're likely to see more people getting very unwell and ending up having to go to hospital. Just a reminder, though, those people who are over 75 are able to get their spring booster and get another jab.
And Faye, why is this REACT study ending at a time when it's recording the highest figures?
Well, it does seem interesting timing, doesn't it? But the government, as part of its Living with COVID strategy, has withdrawn some funding from research, including this particular project, this REACT study. Now, Professor Paul Elliott, who is the director of this programme, has described this move as disappointing. But he does say the UK is fortunate that there is a separate survey that's been run by the Office for National Statistics, and that will continue for now.
Faye, thank you. ITV News has learned that Pno Ferries is refusing to issue refunds to customers, despite saying on their website that they would. It's after the company sacked 800 workers 3 weeks ago to save money. Well, Joel Hills is in Dover for us now. Joel, the Easter getaway is looming, pressure on the Dover-Calais route building. This is terrible timing, isn't it?
There will be another rush of tourists this weekend, and 7 of Pno's 8 ferries remain stuck in port pending safety inspections. The company's website offers customers sailing updates and the following reassurance. It says any customers booked to travel during this period of disruption who choose not to travel can have a full refund. The problem is Pno customers are telling us that is simply not the case. Earlier we spoke to Julia Ferrari, whose family is booked to travel from Hull to Rotterdam on Friday. She wanted to make alternative travel arrangements. She asked for her money back. Pno said no, it would only refund if it cancelled the crossing.
The fact that the website says you can have a refund if you want one, and then you contact them and it actually means you can't have a refund, that I found almost more annoying than anything else.
Pno have since cancelled Julia's crossing, so she is getting a refund. Pno has also since confirmed that it will not be operating any services from Dover to Calais this weekend, the company's busiest route. That does leave the prospect of around 1,000 cars looking for another way of getting from Britain to France. Now, the concern, of course, is there'll be disruption on the sort of scale and the sort of chaos that we saw last weekend. Pno has given us a statement this lunchtime. It's apologised to everyone who's had their trip disrupted. It promises refunds and a free trip to be taken later this year, including, we understand, the busy summer months. That will be a popular but expensive pledge. Pno says it hopes to get 3 of its ships back into service next week, including 2 here from Dover. That's the plan. That's Pno's plan. But as we know, things don't always go to plan. They haven't done over the last 3 weeks.
Joel in Dover, thank you. The Liberal Democrats' campaign for the local elections next month has started today. Sir Ed David was out litter picking in South London this morning. Our political correspondent Shihab Khan was there. Shihab, what are the party's priorities then?
Well, the cost of living crisis was something that was mentioned quite a few times when Ed Davey was here at this park in South London as he launched the Liberal Democrats' local election campaign. He was very critical of the way in which the government has dealt with the situation so far and what he says was a lack of intervention to try and help those who have been affected by it most. And he was keen to emphasise that the Liberal Democrats would behave and deal with this issue differently if they were in power.
And wherever I go, people are saying the government needs to do far more. They've just not done anything. It's as if the Conservatives don't care or don't get it. So the fact that Liberal Democrats are the only party offering a big emergency tax cut, I think will send a message to people.
And the other issues that were mentioned by Ed Davey were things like Partygate, which he says he's spoken to people on the doorstep about, and also the situation in Ukraine. The big challenge for the Liberal Democrats will be to differentiate themselves from Labour, who will be having very similar talking points, and they'll need to do so if they're going to be successful. Now, today, the Liberal Democrat leader was saying that he thinks that a vote for the Liberal Democrats would send a message to the Conservatives that people are unhappy with the way in which they're dealing with the current situations that are present. People will get their chance to make that decision once they hear from all the parties as campaigning goes on and when they go to the ballot box on the 5th of May.
Shihab, thank you. From today, restaurants, cafes and takeaways will be legally required to show the number of calories per dish on their menus. It is part of the government's attempt to cut obesity by encouraging people to make healthier choices. But eating disorder charities say counting calories like this could do more harm than good. Well, Jess Griffiths from the organisation Beat joins me now. Jess, thank you very much for your time this lunchtime. Quite simply, Jess, do you not think that this is a good idea then?
Well, we know that adding calories onto menus will increase the distress for people suffering with eating disorders when they're trying to eat out and rehabilitate in their recovery. An eating disorder is a morbid preoccupation with food, weight and shape. So adding calories on the menus is going to increase that morbid preoccupation.
Jess, what kind of effect could this new law have on somebody who's perhaps dealing with anorexia or bulimia?
Well, it would make it much harder for them to go out and eat. We often encourage them in therapy and support to go and eat in smaller chain restaurants where they don't know the calories because they're just likely to choose the less energy dense foods on offer. And obviously what we want to do is promote health and encourage them to eat a wide range of foods. And it's not just people with anorexia, it's people who might struggle with binge eating disorder or struggle with binging in general. They might feel anxiety and guilt around the calories that they're eating.
What is it about the actual process of counting the calories that has this kind of psychological effect?
Well, people with eating disorders can have perfectionism and low self-esteem underlying their illness. And numbers are success. So some people who are struggling with eating disorders would see lesser numbers as more successful and feeling in control. And obviously, if they've got that right in front of them when they're trying to eat out with their friends, trying to escape their eating disorder, then that's going to be incredibly difficult for them to overcome.
Now, just those concerns are very real, but the wider issue of obesity that this is all for does, of course, need to be tackled. How better should it be dealt with then, do you think?
Well, we would really urge for eating disorder professionals and professionals working in the area of obesity to talk to one another. There's actually very little evidence to suggest that putting the calories on menus will reduce obesity. So we just feel like health needs to be considered physically and mentally, and there needs to be a joined-up approach to this.
And Jess, anyone who is watching this, who is perhaps struggling in this way, what would your advice be to them this lunchtime?
So I think we would really encourage people to take someone supportive with them if they are trying to eat out. It's going to mean planning eating out slightly differently at the moment, but obviously please reach out to the Beat helpline. We're here to help and support and help you manage that anxiety. We don't want this to be a stumbling block to recovery and your journey through your eating disorder. We believe full recovery is still possible.
Jess Griffiths from Beat, thank you. And there is more information about the changes coming in today on our website. Just head to itv.com/news. Finally, Ed Sheeran has won a High Court battle over whether his hit Shape of You copied another artist's song. A judge ruled this morning that Sheeran had not plagiarised part of a track called Oh Why from the musician Sammy Chokri. Sheeran has called for an end to what he calls baseless copyright claims. Rishi Davda reports.
I'm not an entity, I'm not a corporation, I'm a human being, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son. Lawsuits are not a pleasant experience.
Ed Sheeran speaking from the heart after winning a copyright battle over his 2017 hit Shape of You. Sammy Chokri and Ross O'Donoghue had claimed in court that Sheeran copied parts of their track Oh Why. But today, Judge Anthony Zaccaroli ruled that Sheeran had neither deliberately nor subconsciously copied Chokri's song.
I think it has a detrimental effect on everybody's reputation. You don't really want to be seen as the person suing or being sued, because it's just not in the nature of the industry. Copyright is something that you can do accidentally or subconsciously, and it's still an infringement. So that activity, because you would be worried that you're going to get sued even if you didn't know that you had infringed.
This really does have to end. Me, Johnny and Steve are very grateful for all the support sent to us by fellow songwriters over the last few weeks. Hopefully we can all get back to writing songs rather than having to prove that we can write them. Thank you.
Ed Sheeran's lawyer said the case had been deeply traumatising for the star, while Sammy Chokri described it as the worst few weeks of his life. Rishi Davda, ITV News.
That is it from the Lunchtime team for now. Mary Nightingale will be here with the evening news at 6:30. The news where you are is next. But from all of us here, bye-bye for now.